and called into police. I mean, the reality is that this is a 7-story physics and engineering building that was unlocked, but this individual went to a specific classroom that was essentially in a study session for an exam on economics, and chose that classroom. And we know from a witness inside that this gunman yelled something. We don't know what this individual yelled, and then began shooting.
Well, would you look at that? I think it's pretty clear that Western countries are having a serious problem at the moment with the so-called red-green alliance, because today I want to give you some updates, first of all, on the Brown University shooting and what we currently know, as well as a brand new terrorism plot that was foiled today by the FBI that allegedly involved a group of pro-Palestine radical leftists who were seeking to commit a bombing in Los Angeles on New Year's Eve, very notably in a similar fashion that you often see Islamic terrorists commit. And that's something to keep in mind. Of course, as it currently pertains to the Brown University shooter, the suspect is still not in custody, and we certainly hope that happens soon, although the investigation and manhunt thus far has been a little bit of a disaster. But nonetheless, at the current moment, several eyewitnesses have now came out and seem to be corroborating the idea that this attack too was likely perpetrated by some type of Islamic adjacent, or at least radical. And let's not pretend like any of this is isolated. This is on the same exact weekend, very interestingly, that we saw foiled terror plots take place in Europe. And of course, as we covered yesterday, 2 Pakistani nationals committing a mass shooting terror attack against a bunch of Jews at a Hanukkah festival. So we have a leftist violence problem, we have an Islamic violence problem, but clearly the two are intermingling. And some people often ask the question, well, how could that be the case, right? Isn't it a little ironic that the pro-LGBT communists and the Sharia law jihadis seem to be the best of friends? But as I always point out, no, it's actually very simple. They don't have to share the same values. They share a common enemy, which is their goal they share together is they seek to destroy Western civilization. And it's almost like now, right? Oh, what's going on here? These like woke pro-Palestine radicals are now seeking to commit like ISIS-style terror attacks. Folks, we have an issue on our hands, but we'll talk about it, guys. I do, however, want to start today's video by acknowledging and mourning the life of Ella Cook. This is a 19-year-old woman who was tragically one of the victims of that Brown University shooting, and she apparently was the vice president of the Republican club at that campus. So at the moment, we don't know for sure whether she was intentionally targeted or just happened to be in the engineering building when that all took place. Apparently the other victim is like some exchange student from Uzbekistan or something like that. But regardless, objectively, right, our movement lost a warrior on the front lines of the battlefield, and it's a horrific situation, and our prayers go out to her family and everyone who knew her. And I encourage all young conservatives certainly to keep this woman in your prayers and your memory, and, you know, remember the legacy here, right, of someone who was trying to do the right thing and trying to, you know, take on the enemy firsthand, right, at a university that's overwhelmingly so left-wing, so against our beliefs. And you know, it's just a horrible situation. But that said, let's now tell you what we do know. So this is apparently according to the Center Square at the current moment. So authorities are continuing to search for a lone gunman who killed 2 Brown University students, including the 19-year-old vice president of the elite college's Republican club, and wounded 9 others in a mass shooting over the weekend. Now, apparently, here's what's interesting, though, and I'm going to point out, several media outlets quoted students and other witnesses saying that the shooter yelled Allahu Akbar before opening fire in the building. Right, so exactly as I was describing, it does appear this may have been the case. Now, again, take this as you will. This is an eyewitness account, so, you know, it's possible people mishear things. It's possible that the guy maybe was doing it for some type of Call of Duty style irony thing, but at the same time, I mean, let's use our heads here, right? Let's use our heads. On the same weekend where we see all this stuff happening, and then another one right here shouts Allahu Akbar, yeah, I think more likely than not, we should probably just take that seriously. But again, it's an ongoing investigation. I'm just going to bring that up though, right? Another potential case of the same exact similar motivations in terrorist attacks across many different Western nations. Thus far, authorities have detained a person of interest on Sunday night, apparently who was some type of like left-wing activist, according to some reports, but they've since released that person. Apparently was not the right individual. The manhunt is still continuing at the current moment. We do know, however, that this video does exist of the suspect. Take a look.
This is the first video that we're showing you. This is the individual walking. It's on the sidewalk of Benevolent. And this is prior to the incident. Here we go again with this video too, Mike. Again, you see him walking. Move on to the third video. This is some photos of this individual. And they will all be time-stamped. The last photo. Thank you.
So, I mean, we can't really tell what the guy looks like. He's wearing black bloc. It's a low-resolution photo. But again, I say, on a weekend where we just saw a bunch of Islamic terror plots in other countries, and the guy here, eyewitnesses said they heard say Allahu Akbar, definitely something to certainly keep an eye on. And this is happening at the same exact time where over in California, this, by the way, it's worth noting, is a result of President Trump's post-Charlie Kirk assassination executive orders to really use the FBI properly against the radical and violent left, that a pro-Palestine leftist terror bombing that was planned for Los Angeles on New Year's Eve using IEDs was just thwarted, according to U.S. Attorney for California, S.A. Lee. Apparently 4 people were arrested, and these people are members of the anti-capitalist Turtle Island Liberation Front. So in other words, what were they a part of? As we were describing constantly for the past several months, these terror cells, these groups of militant leftists that are part of their own militias, or as they call them, liberation fronts, that apparently, again, I say, right, were seeking not just to commit an act of terrorism, but notably a bombing, right? Using IEDs. Like, that's what ISIS does. That's what the Islamic radicals do. Now, the current suspects do not appear to be of that background. It seems more like they're just crazy radical left. But again, I say, what happens when those people intermingle? What happens when they seek common cause? They start using very similar strategies. Take a listen.
Valuable assistance over the weekend with a very complex and coordinated search warrants that were done. The charges we are announcing today stem from the defendants and their co-conspirators' detailed, coordinated plot to bomb multiple U.S. companies on New Year's Eve. Thankfully, that plot has now been foiled thanks to the hard work of the FBI and the Department of Justice. This investigation was initiated in part due to the September 2025 executive order signed by President Trump to root out left-wing domestic terror organizations in our country, such as Antifa and other radical groups like the Turtle Island Liberation Front. As the president made clear, recent attacks across the country have highlighted the grave threats posed by these far-left domestic terror groups. These threats are sophisticated, organized campaigns of targeted intimidation, radicalization, threats, and violence designed to silence opposing speech, limit political activity, and direct policy outcomes, and prevent the proper functioning of a democratic society. In direct response to the President's order, the Attorney General issued a memo to our offices implementing and mobilizing federal law enforcement to prioritize and counter domestic terrorism and political violence investigations. As a result of those directives, we built this case. Both my office and the FBI have invested substantial resources into investigating and charging these organizations. And if anyone does not believe that members of these groups are organized, sophisticated, and extremely violent, let me tell you about the plot in this case. The four defendants are Audrey Carroll, 30 years old. The pictures, I think we have them somewhere. We'll put them up here. Audrey Carroll, 30 years old. Zachary Aaron Page, 32. Dante Gaffield, 24. And Tina Lay, 41. Each from the Los Angeles area. Each is charged with conspiracy and possession of an unregistered destructive device in violation of Title 26, United States Code Section 5861D. We intend to file additional charges in the coming weeks as we finish reviewing the evidence. The defendants are all radical anti-government members of the Turtle Island Liberation Front, which, according to their own social media, is an anti-capitalist, anti-government movement that calls for their associates to rise up and fight back against capitalism. One of the leaders of the organization, defendant Audrey Carroll, helped organize an even more radical faction of the group called the Order of the Black Lotus.
Well, I think it's first of all genuinely worth giving credit to the government for once, and especially Trump's executive order in terms of actually being able to stop this terror plot before it occurred. As we spoke about months ago, apparently the FBI, before the Charlie Kirk assassination, was not even really treating left-wing domestic terrorism as a serious threat to even keep an eye on or surveil. But now that is happening, and now clearly you can see that was vital to actually building the case against these people. So although it's certainly true that it feels very often like the government doesn't do enough to keep us safe from these lunatics and we need to be doing a lot more, I mean, you know, you got to start somewhere. And so, again, like, credit is due where it's due here. These people got taken down. Now, you can see here from the list of, first of all, who was arrested here, right? The defendants in this case. None of these people particularly appear to be from Islamic origin. This Zachary Page individual does appear to be of potential trans identity. But yeah, I mean, overall, it seems pretty clear. These are just leftists, right? These are just crazy, violent communists that live amongst us, exist in this country all over the place. But interestingly, again, okay, we'll show you the proof of that. So here, for instance, is the social media page of the Turtle Island Liberation Front. And you can see a bunch of Palestine-related activism on there. I mean, their bio reads, "Liberation through decolonization and tribal sovereignty," whatever that's supposed to mean, a bunch of leftist buzzwords. But hey, what have I been saying? Okay, these people, as they go in the streets and they chant things like, "We are Hamas, we are Hezbollah, we globalize the Intifada," right? That's the big one. And of course, very often, a big reason leftists are opposed to Israel is because they see it as a colonial settler apartheid state. They use these words all the time. By the way, they use these same exact words against America and many of the Western countries. So why should you be surprised when the people who said decolonize the world and globalize the Intifada are, you know, they may not be themselves like radical Islamists, but you notice how in the end they kind of become the same thing, and they again try to perpetrate a terror attack here that's very similar to what you would see from ISIS or whatever it is, right? So you see other pages here, other posts like, you know, peaceful protests will never be enough. Gee, I feel like I've heard that one quite a few times as well. We are up against fascist colonizers. Oh, well, surely I don't think they were just referring to Netanyahu in this case, were they? Yeah, it turns out, again, when people say globalize the Intifada, you should take their words seriously. That's exactly what they're saying. They're again, as I've been trying to like point out to people, and some don't always understand it, okay? Whatever you even think about the greater Israel issue, the Palestine protest movement in particular is a prime example, first of all, of the Red-Green Alliance, right? Literally a bunch of jihadis are aligning with a bunch of communists for their own different reasons, but it's not exclusively about, oh, a war in the Middle East, or, you know, we don't like seeing children get bombed or something. No, it has everything to do with the fact that, as they're saying themselves, it's a greater kind of communist attempt to undermine the West and use many of those same arguments against America. Hence why, yeah, exactly, right? The people who say they're for decolonization and globalizing the Intifada, turns out it's not just about not liking Israel. Yeah, go figure, right? And there's another one there. No morals for us to appeal to. No sense of justice or what's right. We cannot vote ourselves out of a mass colonizer occupation. You can't vote your way out of it, really. I wonder what strategy these people would think to employ instead. I mean, of course we know. And the FBI has, by the way, since released these pictures from the case. Apparently, this includes some of the evidence. But obviously, look at the signs that you see. So a bunch of stuff, obviously, about Palestine, resist the occupation, blah, blah, blah. Long live Turtle Island in Palestine. But alongside that, what goes, right? Death to America and death to ICE. Yeah, folks, it's not exactly a big, gigantic mystery what was behind all of this or what was motivating it, right? So again, clearly we have a left-wing terrorism problem. Clearly we have an Islamic terrorism problem. And not only are the two multiplying, right? It feels like we're seeing a lot more of it lately than we did before, but they're working in conjunction with one another, oftentimes for the same exact cause. And it's interesting, too, because, this is all happening now that the war in Gaza is more or less over, right? We have the ceasefire, we have the peace deal, by the way, something interestingly that they didn't want to necessarily give President Trump a whole lot of credit for. But now that they don't have the war to fight over there, they're just saying, okay, we're going to come and fight it here because, again, what? Globalize the intifada. And yes, after all, right? As I said yesterday about the Australia situation, when it comes to the Islamic terror problem, it's absolutely something that was voluntarily imported by Western nations. Well, after all, if your entire political ideology is essentially to advocate for that very importation, hey, yeah, we want more terrorists to be present in our countries. And if you're against that, you're bigoted, you're Islamophobic, you're racist. National security, that very idea is racist, right? But if you're going to spread this type of rhetoric and these ideas, after all, why should we really be all that surprised that, again, you're engaging in the same exact behavior? No, we shouldn't. So to me, this is all absolutely connected, right? The Red-Green Alliance, you could almost view it as the same. I know they're technically coming from different motivations. Technically, the FBI probably has different work to do in looking specifically at like left-wing political violence and Islamic religiously inspired violence. But it just seems like they're working together, aren't they? On many different levels. And I don't think this is going to be the last incident of it that we see. And by the way, unless the government over the next couple of years, I understand it takes time. I understand that RICO cases and drastically changing national security issues. I understand it's not an overnight process. But unless we take serious steps to ensure that, not just people like this, but their benefactors, their collaborators, and, other such people also get thrown in jail. They're no longer allowed to kind of function in normal society and be able to constantly intimidate others, drive others to violence or themselves commit violence. Then, come next time around when Democrats have total power over the government, it truly is a scary thought to think to yourself, well, what are they going to do when this base of radicals now is enabled by the people in power? Yeah. Certainly something to consider. That's the mission we have on our hands, by the way. We must crush the organized violent left and their friends waving the green flags. You know what I mean? But all right, that said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.